Chapter 6, Nightlife. Calipatria State Prison had issued me a reporting date of December 1st, 1991. I saw the look on Sergeant Grandy's face. He was sad and disappointed that I was going to be transferring to a new institution. My kitchen partner and best friend, Correctional Officer Jesse Gonzalez, gave me a big hug and said, "I will miss you, you son of a bitch. Who am I going to go out and party with now?" Jesse and I did a lot of partying together off duty. On my birthday that year, we headed off to Fresno, California to our favorite place, the bar in the airport Holiday Inn. Both being single, good-looking guys, we didn't have any problem meeting ladies to socialize with. It was happy hour, and lined up in front of us were 5 kamikaze shots, which followed by several Long Island iced teas. Around 9 o'clock that night, Jesse and I headed to the famous Black Angus restaurant downtown Fresno, where the Fresno State University college girls hung out. But before going to the Angus, we stopped at a place next door to it, another bar called Wilker's. Surprisingly, it had a 4-to-1 ratio, women to men. Being the ladies' man that he was, Jesse floated through the crowd, chatting up the girls left and right. Me, being the more laid-back kind of guy, stayed at the bar and just observed the crowd. Clustered of pretty girls were every 3 feet. The music was blaring, the drinks had started to hit me, and I had work in the morning. Suddenly Jesse was gone, probably headed next door to the Angus looking for more ladies. Sure enough, Jesse was at the Angus on the dance floor with a gorgeous blonde dancing up a storm. Once again, I found refuge at the bar. My people watching was distracted by 2 Fresno police officers making their way towards the bar, towards me. When they approached me, they asked me to step outside with them. Confused, I obeyed, and once outside, I saw more Fresno police officers pulling up to the curb. The sergeant from the Fresno Police Department began to question me. "Did you have a lot to drink tonight?" "Yes," I replied. "Were you at the bar next door, Wilker's?" "Yes, I was there with my partner." The sergeant then advised me that there were several complaints from women that I was grabbing their butts. I was bewildered. I explained I was weaving through the crowd as I left, certainly bumping people, but certainly not grabbing any butts. The sergeant then asked for my ID, where I was employed, and if I was driving. I surrendered my driver's license, advised him that I was not driving that night, and that I was a correctional officer for the Department of Corrections at Corcoran State Prison. Just as Jesse showed up, the sergeant told his officer to place me in handcuffs. I was escorted to the police cruiser and told to lean against the front bumper. This was the first time I'd ever been placed in handcuffs. So this is what it feels like, I thought. I was then placed in the back of the police cruiser and advised that I was not being arrested. I was, however, brought down to the county jail for public intoxication and placed in a holding cell. At some point, while worrying about the future of my job status and my transfer, I fell asleep only to be woken up by an officer yelling out my name and that I was being released. At that point, it was about 1 in the morning. Still drunk, I had to call the watch commander to inform him that I would not be reporting for duty that morning. He was already informed of the situation and instructed me to write a report of the details that occurred that night and gave it to the custody captain of the level 4 SHU area. All weekend, I was pacing back and forth in my apartment. My fate was in the hands of the custody captain, who was rumored to be a no-nonsense, by-the-book individual. That Monday morning, I reported on my post in the SHU kitchen at 4 o'clock in the morning. It was already buzzing around the SHU units what had happened to me over the weekend. Later, Sergeant Grandy entered the SHU kitchen with a pissed-off face and a hard stare directed towards me. He pointed at me and motioned for me into his office. Once he cleared the office of all staff, he let it rip. "What were you thinking, man? The captain is very upset and has not decided what to do with you yet. You put yourself in a bind. Was it worth it?" Then the kitchen phone rang. It was the captain's secretary, stating the captain wanted to see me in his office immediately. Sergeant Grandy gave me a heads up saying he and the captain go way back, and for me not to bullshit him or he would have my ass. Captain Giles had a flat top and a dip of chewing tobacco in his mouth. So, was it worth it? No, sir. Officer Vodka, I have heard nothing but good things about you. You've been doing an outstanding job running my shoe kitchen, and your supervisor and I go way back. He was vouching for you by sticking his neck out on a limb. You're a lucky young man. Now get the hell out of my office, and good luck down in the new prison. Calipatria State Prison sat on 300 acres. It opened in January 1992, but the activation staff, which I was assigned to, had to be there a month early before the first buses arrived with the inmates. We had to sweep the yards with metal detectors to look for metal objects that the inmates could find and make into weapons. We had to conduct security checks of the inside perimeter, making sure there was no escape route for inmates to discover, and set up the housing units with mattresses and other materials. We all had to qualify at the range with all of lethal and non-lethal weapons, along with the PR-24 training. We sat through several classroom presentations about the prison, and finally, we met the new warden, Bud Prunty. At my first opportunity, I applied for the ISU squad. This was the investigative service unit I saw in my last prison. They had freedom to roam the prison and look for crime inside the walls. The selection process was long and tedious, supervised by Captain Roderick Hickman, my old commander at the academy. My file from Corcoran was evaluated. I was required to pass a series of tests, and I was interviewed by the warden and the captain of the investigative services unit, along with the squad sergeant. One question I remember was, would I ignore a guard beating up a prisoner? I answered in a stern voice, no. It must have been an answer they liked because I was chosen, one of 6 of 200 applicants. I called my parents and informed them about my new job. After weeks of training in the investigative services unit, my first assignment was at the IMARS office. IMARS is known as Inmate Monitoring and Recording System. It was an isolated room with no windows and a solid steel door that required a Folger's Atom prison key to gain entry. At Calipatria, the inmates would have telephones inside their housing units, and any outbound calls would have to be made as a collect call. There were hundreds of hours stored on large reels of tape for a 24-hour period. The tapes had to be replaced every day of the week. This machine was very useful in apprehending drugs from entering the prison by visitors and for tracking gang-related business on the streets, which helped local law enforcement. It was here, while working at Calipatria, that I met my first wife, Diane. In 1993, after dating for over a year, we were married and trying to settle into our new life together. Shortly after, we visited her family in Oregon, and surprisingly, we fell in love with the area. Monitoring tapes in the IMARS back at Calipatria wasn't exactly what I expected. It turned out to be a major disappointment. So when Diane introduced the idea of moving to Oregon, I was all for it. I also knew there was a state-of-the-art maximum security prison recently built in the area. Pelican Bay State Prison was nestled in the tall redwoods of the California and Oregon coastline. It was in Crescent City, California, the last stop before you enter the Oregon border on the coastline. About a year later, in March of 1994, I transferred when Diane was pregnant with our son.